No, okay. I know, I got excited. Yes. And we are live. I'm excited. Hi, everyone. I'm Renee Coakley.
I'm Cal Coakley
of Coakley Financial Group, and we are here today to talk about the importance of estate planning. We actually have Camellia Reed Sherman here from Reed Sherman Law Firm. Camellia is the managing attorney of Reed Sherman Law Firm. It's located in Charles County, Maryland, where her mission is to educate and empower clients with the strategic solutions for protecting their families, assets, and their legacy. Ms. Reed Sherman is licensed in Maryland and DC, where she serves clients in family law and estate planning matters. She opened her firm because she wanted her clients to play an active role in the process. She understands that her clients are her firm's most valued assets and is committed to serving each client with professionalism, integrity, and excellence. Wow, we are so happy to have you here today, Camellia.
Yes, we are, Camellia.
Can you hear us? Can you see us? Are you there?
I am excited to be here. Happy Friday, everybody.
Yay. Now, September is actually National Insurance Awareness Month. And it was important for us to have you on here because we always have clients ask us things like, do you know any attorneys? Do you do estate planning? I need a will. And a lot of times these are just conversations that we're not having. We are absolutely not having these conversations at all. And I know that there have been so many horror stories in my family and in everyone else's family. So we kind of wanted to have you on here to talk about the importance. Can you talk about why you got started?
Well, initially, I decided I was going to become an attorney when I was 13 because of personal experiences. And I've watched a lot of friends and families, and again, my own personal experiences, where I've witnessed people lose their assets. Not only their assets, but relationships were destroyed because there was no estate plan in place. You know, I've had, a loved one in the hospital dying, and you have some family members who felt like they were entitled to their assets. I mean, there's so many different horror stories. They go into the home and they start taking stuff out because they claim that the loved one, promised them, I can have this, I can have that. And in addition to that, you have a lot of homes, assets being lost because there are no estate planning done prior to. But again, estate planning, we often think of estate planning in the sense of planning for death. I like to think of it as contingency planning or crisis management, because estate planning is not just for who gets my stuff after I die. It's in the event of a medical crisis or some type of crisis that I can no longer take care of myself. Who's going to take care of me? Who's going to take care of my minor children? What type of medical care am I going to get? Am I going to get the type of medical care that I want? Do I need to make the decisions about what type of care that I want and the type of care that I don't want? Who's going to manage my finances? So estate planning isn't solely about who's going to get my stuff when I die. It's about what's going to happen in the event of a crisis, and the crisis may or may not be death.
Wow, that's huge. And yes. I don't think that that's something that we touch on a lot. Now, I know that Cal and I have small children.
That's right.
And we do have a blended family. So it was important for us to actually sit down and take care of that because we didn't want anyone feeling left out, number one. Yes. And then with us having small kids, we were going on a trip. We were going on an incentive trip. The company was sending us to Hawaii at a time. Because of the production that the agency had. So we were really excited. But we sat down and thought about it. We're like, both of us are going to be on this plane. What happens
if something happens
if we don't come back? So we went ahead and took it into our own hands and said, okay, we're going to go sit down with someone and we are going to go ahead and have an estate plan done. And I think a lot of times people feel like, well, I don't have anything, so I don't need an estate plan. Now, is that true at all?
Okay, I want to address two things. I want to address the fact that you guys took responsibility because, especially because you had minor children before you went on that trip, because oftentimes, and I tell people, if you don't have an estate plan, the state has one for you, but especially if you have minor children, you want to make sure that you create the rules, because if not, your minor children could be left in the hands of someone that you may not have chosen. You know, one of the aspects of estate planning is appointing a guardian for your minor children in the event that you can't care for them. And for me as a parent, that is very, very important, because if you don't make that decision, and I've said this before, and someone said that it was pretty harsh, you're playing Russian roulette with your children's future, because your children may be left in the hands of your sibling who may not share your values, who may not share your ideas about education, who may not have the same, outlook for your child's future that you have. And if you choose not to do that, it goes through, someone's going to go to court and decide. And people have very different reasons for why they want to be, guardians of your children. And some of it could very well be financially motivated. If they know that you're leaving your child an awful lot of, or a large amount of money, that might be their motivation, so you might want to think about, those types of things especially when you have minor children. But with regards to myths, there's so many different myths. And one of the main ones that you touched on is, I don't have anything, so I don't need an estate plan. But the reality is, oftentimes we have more than we think. Just because you don't have millions in the bank, if you have an investment, if you have any investment accounts, if you have an insurance policy, if you have retirement accounts, if you have a home, if it has equity, if you have an automobile, if you have a bank account, even if it only has $500 in it, I often use the analogy, you wouldn't allow someone to come in and take money out of your purse and decide how it's distributed, would you? So you wouldn't let the court to decide how your money is distributed. But if you choose not to make those decisions, if you choose not to create your rules, then it's left in the hands of the legislators, and they're going to make decisions how your money is being spent, who's going to care for your kids. And in addition to that, you want to protect what you have. Whether it's $5 or whether it's $500,000 or $5 million, you want to be able to protect what you have. And that's what the estate planning process allows you to structure your assets in a way that you protect it from creditors and predators. And some of the predators could very well be your children, and they not know it, because they could be subject to litigation, debts and things of that nature. But if your estate plan is not structured in a way that it protects your kids from those things, or the assets from those things, then it's subject to being lost. So just to kind of summarize it, estate planning is not just for distributing your assets. And again, you might want to take inventory of what you do have versus just thinking, if I don't have a large amount of money in the bank, because again, estate planning, I'm just going to go over like 8 reasons why. We talked about if you have minor children, appointing a guardian for your minor children, distributing how your assets are going to be, determining how your assets are going to be distributed upon your death, protecting your assets, deciding who's going to manage your money in the event that you become incapacitated. Who are you going to appoint as the agent to manage your finances? And there's a lot that has to go into consideration when you're thinking about who's going to be the power of attorney. And one of the challenges is, if you don't have an estate plan, you haven't appointed an agent as your power of attorney, the court appoints one, and they may not be in a position where they're able to manage your assets in the way that you would want them to be done. And in addition to that, there's so many stories where, because there wasn't an estate plan, someone went in, and I had a conversation with someone the other day, the niece is spending the aunt's money just recklessly because, she was appointed a power of attorney, because the power of attorney, unless stated otherwise, that becomes effective immediately. So you want to make sure that you're taking into consideration, who it is that you want to appoint as a power of attorney. You want to think about personal care management. In the event that, let's say that you become incapacitated, you're no longer able to take care of yourself. What type of day-to-day health, personal care management do you want? And I have some clients that say, hey, I drink a glass of wine every day. If you want to be able to continue to drink a glass of wine every day, then you want to make sure that, you have that written so that whoever your care provider is knows, what your day-to-day routines are. In addition to that, you also want to make sure that, you have a medical directive to decide what type of medical care you want, what type of medical care you don't want. You could have some religious beliefs that, you believe that, there's certain limitations and restrictions that you don't want, and you have to make sure that you put those things in place. And also having an estate plan, oftentimes people think it's so costly, but I ask people to think about the value, because then the reality is you end up paying more on the end if you don't have an estate plan, because your estate has to go through probate, you have to pay attorney's fees, you have to pay the probate process. And if there's any type of litigation, that can last forever. James Brown, I think his estate has been in litigation for about 11 years. So what pays for that litigation? Your estate. So, I'll use the example of Aretha Franklin dying without an estate plan. She has to pay I think it's 40%. No, she has to pay 40% of her estate. So about 28 to 32 million in inheritance taxes that could have been avoided had she had an estate plan. And I want to use the cost versus value. Had she paid, let's say even $1 million, which that seems a bit much for an estate plan, that would have saved her 31 million. It could have very well saved her 31 million.
Wow.
So when folks are thinking about, estate planning is costly, I challenge you to think about the value on the far end. And it's not just the financial value, it's the emotional cost associated with what happens when people don't have an estate plan.
That's true, because when we did it, actually it wasn't even as expensive as we thought it was going to be.
That's right.
And it was a lot easier than we thought, because when we went in, the attorney actually listened to the things that we said that we wanted, and he gave us options. And a lot of times people say things like, oh, I just need a will. So can you probably explain to them maybe like why they might need a will and a trust, or some of the other estate tools that they might need in addition to just a will?
Absolutely. And again, I challenge you to think about it as crisis management and not just planning for death. And one of the reasons that you may need something in addition to a will is because a will only becomes effective upon your death. A will serves three purposes: to appoint a guardian for your minor child or dependent adult, appoint an executor to manage your estate upon your death, and to determine how your assets are distributed. But those assets that are distributed through a will, they're not necessarily protected. And a will has to go through probate. If you have minor children and you distribute your assets to your minor child and they depend on you financially, then the probate process can last 6 months, 9 months, and even years, depending on, the complexity and, the dynamics of the individuals involved. So when you only have a will and your child is dependent on you financially and you're no longer here to provide, and those are the only assets that are available, your child is dependent on someone else now financially, because you didn't make arrangements to make sure that, he has access to finances, and the guardian has access to resources so that they can provide for them. So now you have a child who just lost their parents and is probably being placed in a different socioeconomic status than they were used to. So you got to think about those things as well. But in addition to that, we talked about crisis management. You want to think about, what if something happens and you don't die? If you only have a will, then the will only is effective once you're dead.
Yes.
I had someone say, well, I have all my medical stuff in my will. If anybody puts your medical instructions in a will, then you might want to reconsider whether or not you need to be following the guidance of that person, because what happens to you medically after you're dead doesn't really matter, right?
That's right.
So you think about, about it. And when I challenge you, when you're thinking about, all I need is a will, I want you to think about crisis management. What if something happens and I don't die? Because if I don't die, I want to make sure that I'm able to maintain as much normalcy as possible. I want to make sure that my healthcare wishes are honored. But if I don't memorialize that, then they can't be honored because no one knows. And I often have people say, oh, my kids know what I want.
Yes.
Well,
we get that too with insurance too.
Yes.
We get the same feedback.
Let me say this to you. People change under crises, right? And it's not necessarily, oftentimes you think of it's just malicious. If you have two kids and you're in a medical crisis, they may both want what's best for you, but how to get there may be different, right? And when they have different ideas about what to do and what not to do, then that's when conflict ensues. And if you don't have an estate plan, then what happens? They go to court. Now they got to battle it out in court to figure out who's going to be the guardian or the conservator or their parents. So who's going to make those decisions? Whereas if you have advance directive, you get to write all the rules as to how the decisions are made. And if there's, if they can't come to an agreement, if there's something that's not covered in the medical directive, if they can't come to an agreement, this person has the ultimate authority to make the final decision. Those are things. And I often say that, people say, I don't have an estate plan. Everybody has an estate plan. It's just a matter of whether you create the rules or the state creates the rules. And let me just say that the state's rules may not always be to your benefit.
Wow.
That was some awesome information.
That was
powerful.
powerful. I know a lot of times, we have a blended family.
Yes.
And a lot of times people assume that, okay, well, I have a blended family and I don't need an estate plan. Oh, my husband or my spouse will handle it all. But I don't think they think about situations where maybe your spouse might not get along with your children. Or what happens to your children if your spouse decides that they get nothing? Or so can you maybe touch on that and how things change when you do have a blended family?
I'm glad you said it, because I often get that, my spouse is going to get everything. Well, there's a presumption within through the laws of intestacy. If you have kids, so if you only have kids within the marriage and one spouse predeceases the other, then the other spouse will get everything, because there's a presumption that the parents are going to take care of their kids, right? But however, if you, in your case, because you have a blended family, that presumption is not there. So if you die without a will or you die without an estate plan, then the rules, the Uniform Probate Code, the rules totally change. The rules are different. The spouse may not even get 50%. They'll get, depending on the state, they'll get a certain amount up front, and then they get a percentage based on the kids and things of that nature. Then the kids get their percentage as well. So if you think about it, depending on the number of kids you have, you may not end up with what you feel that you deserve because you didn't put those measures in place. But again, like you said, oftentimes you have blended families, and that's becoming that's one of the big things that we see often, is that when we have blended families, you want to make sure that your kids are taken care of. And that's when oftentimes people put trust in place, and we call it ruling from the grave. You create rules as to, you want to make sure your spouse is taken care of, but you also want to make sure that your kids are taken care of. And you don't want the idea of, or most people don't want to have their spouse, after they've passed, their spouse go off and get married again, and then leave. They end up getting divorced and they lose their assets in divorce, aside from the marital property laws and things of that nature. Once they become commingled, they could potentially lose those assets. So now everything that you've worked hard for has been lost to the subsequent spouse, and now your kids don't even have access. But if you create an estate plan, you write the rules. If she gets married, you put them in a trust, so it's protected from those types of things. And if your spouse gets remarried, and you decide you don't want her to get any more of the money, then you have that right to do that, to create those rules.
Wow. That's good stuff right there.
Wow. This is Cal Renee Coakley with Coakley Financial Group, and we are here today talking to Camellia Reed Sherman of Reed Sherman Law, and we are having the important conversation about the importance of estate planning. So if you've just joined, or if you know anyone that definitely needs to hear this information, please feel free to type in replay. We'll come back with questions. Also, feel free to go ahead and to like this and share it, so that the people that, or even tag people that would need this information. But that was really intense what you just said about being able to rule from the grave. And that was one of the things that we did, was, we made sure that there was a trust set up. And our children, if, we pass away early, they're not going to get everything up front, because we don't feel like they're going to be mature enough to handle their finances all at one time. So we have different ages. We're 21, 25. So so they'll gradually get that money. And we've also put stipulations in there even about college. So I think that that is huge, that, you know, that way our wishes are known. So that was what you just said just now. That was huge. And I don't think that we even think about that.
And again, share, as Renee said, please share this out. Everybody needs this, not just some people. Everyone needs this. And what happens is that it gets uncomfortable because people don't want to think about that.
Sure.
So it's not one of those things that we say in insurance that's sexy. It's not a sexy topic. So most people don't want to talk about it, but it's one of those topics that needs to be done.
But I also feel like like talking about this it's also about being financially mature. You know, when we grow up, we mature, we talk about puberty, but then a lot of times we don't talk about the things that come with finances and becoming financially mature. And estate planning is a part of you maturing and becoming financially mature. It might be uncomfortable at first, but once you have a plan in place, it actually gives you a peace of mind, and you're then able to kind of take a deep breath and know that I did the mature thing and I planned for not only my future, but the future of my family. So that way, you know that your legacy will actually be a legacy of one that your family can think back and think about you and go, wow, she really did a great job as far as planning everything out, as opposed to going, oh gosh, here I go to probate court again. How are we going to pay for this? Or how are we going to figure out how to take care of all of our expenses? So I definitely, we met Kim Leah at an event here in Atlanta.
That's right.
And truth be told, from the moment we met her,
that's right.
I told her, I said, we fell in love with you.
That's right.
Just because, again, like the service that you offer is so invaluable. And I don't feel like, you know, the price that's put on it, again, we don't think about the value that comes with it. So I do want to thank you for just all of the information that you provided today, and just, you know, debunking a lot of the myths that come along with it. So I don't know if you have any additional myths or even reasons that you want to talk about as far as estate planning and what else we should be doing.
Sure, I could talk about this stuff all day, but I know we're limited time. But one thing that you said that I wanted to touch on was the fact about your legacy. And we talk about that, and we know that, and I'm going to use Aretha Franklin. She had an illustrious history. You know, she's won so many awards, and she's, you know, going to be remembered for those things. But her legacy is going to end with an asterisk, because what we're going to remember is the final chapter is she didn't have an estate plan. And we're yet to see what's going to happen with the probate court, and whether or not we're going to have these creditors and predators coming through, and how long her estate is going to be in probate. And again, I talked about James Brown. It's been 11 years and his estate still hasn't been settled. That's not quite how you want your legacy to be remembered, because they're going to forget all the other stuff, because it's going to be tarnished by the fact that you didn't have an estate plan. But one thing I also want to talk about is that oftentimes I hear people say, well, I have beneficiaries listed on all of my retirement accounts, my insurance, my that. But what you want to think about is the risks that are associated with listing your beneficiaries on your insurance policy and your retirement account. And I'll use the adult kids as an example. You have adult kids that are married, and you list them on your insurance policy, right? And they get all this money, and then something happens. Say they're married, they get divorced. That money could be lost in the divorce. That's not quite how you want the money to be spent, you know. So you want to think about when you're doing those things. Yes, it's easy, and it's, you know, it avoids probate and those types of things. And there are other ways that you can avoid probate. A trust doesn't go through probate unless it's a testamentary trust. So you got to think about those types of things. What I challenge people to do is make sure that when you go in, this is not a process. For me, it's normally like 4 or 5 touches with my clients. You know, I encourage them to attend a 2-hour workshop, because I think that it's important that you understand all the estate planning tools before you just go in. And that's one of the reasons that I opened my firm, is because I don't want my client to come in and say, Kim, I want a will. and fill out a questionnaire. I want to make sure that they understand what the limitations are and what the other tools are associated with estate planning. So one of the things that I tell everybody, whether you come to my firm or you go to anybody else's firm, make sure that you understand the process and that you're dealing with an attorney that's going to speak in your language, not going to speak legalese or speak, at a level that you're not comfortable with or you don't understand. Because this is an investment, not just, a financial investment. This is an investment for your future, for your children's future, for, generations to come, because if you don't have this estate plan, then a lot of your assets can be lost and you just, because you had misinformation or because of lack of information. And you have to be an active part of the process. My clients can't come in and say, hey, Kim, this is what I need. Just, I'll come back in a couple of weeks and, something like that. It doesn't work like that at my firm because I don't believe that that's effective for my clients. I want to make sure that they are part of the process. We are a team. It's not just, hey, Kim, I'm going to write you this check and this is what I want. I'll be back in a bit. No, I need to make sure that you understand what you're getting and understand what the options are. So.
Wow, that's huge.
That's some good information there.
Now, if anyone wants to get in contact with you or even set up an appointment with you, how would they do that?
Okay, my website is Reed Sherman, that's REED, Sherman, SHERMAN, They can contact me at 775-4-KEMLIA. I was about to think of the number.
And what part of the country are you located?
I'm located in Maryland and DC. I'm licensed in Maryland and DC.
Okay.
They can follow me on social media. I release a blog every week, every Wednesday at 11 o'clock, like clockwork. The blog last week was the Anatomy of an Estate Plan. This week's blog was the Power of Attorney, 5 myths about 5 things you should know about a power of attorney. And those things are very, very important because oftentimes you just think, oh, I'm just going to appoint this person. I'm going to appoint that person. And we don't put forth the effort or we don't understand the things that we need to take into consideration when we're appointing people. But again, readshermanlaw.com. You can follow me on social media with the same handle, Reed Sherman Law. I do workshops. If you're in the Maryland and DC area, I have a workshop scheduled for the 29th of September from 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock. If you go to my not my Facebook page, if you go to my website, just click on workshop and it'll provide all the information. Just register. I'd love to have you if you're here in the Maryland and DC area. If you have any questions or anything, just, you can hit me up on my social media pages or contact me and, either I'll make a blog about it or I'll make a video or, answer your question. But I can't give you legal advice if you're not in the Maryland or DC area. I can give you legal information.
Oh, okay. Wow. We actually had some questions here. Danielle Washington wanted to know how soon should you get a power of attorney on an aging parent now that you actually mentioned that? So it's like, wow.
You should get, and it's not just an aging parent. You should get a power of attorney. I think everybody should have a power of attorney. And the reason is because you never know when there's going to be a medical crisis. You may go out and step off the curb outside of your apartment building or your home and hit your head. And now you've lost capacity to make decisions. So it's not just about aging parents, but if you have aging parents and you're concerned, you should get it done sooner than later.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Okay. So trying to see if we had any other questions. Yeah, so we had, this is good.
Yeah, people are saying this is good. Camilla,
good.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to spend with us today. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes. So we definitely plan on having you again.
Yes, we plan on having you back.
Yeah.
If I could just go back to Danielle's question, Danielle, not just power of attorney, I would, encourage them to get all of their estate planning documents done because again, you never know when a crisis is going to happen,
That's true. That's actually really good because I know that I have all the advance directives and medical proxies from my mom, and I probably need to go ahead and take care of some additional stuff too.
Yes.
But wow.
One thing I want to say that even if you have those documents, it's important to do like an annual review to make sure that nothing has changed, especially if you have a trust. You want to make sure that, if you have any additional assets, because one of the challenges is if you don't review it and then something happens, then the document that you have, because we have changes in the law, the documents that you have may not necessarily get you the end goal that you hope for.
Yeah, I was going to say, we tell our clients that even with insurance, like you need to go back and you
do
need
an
to
annual review. Yes, right.
So that's true.
That's
definitely.
Right. Yes.
Wow.
And we were also thinking about we need to do an annual review on our own estate
planning.
as well. So good stuff.
Wow.
That's part of my estate planning services that I offer. I do an annual maintenance program for my clients. So, and part of the reason is because oftentimes we do it and then we don't think about it anymore.
That's right.
That encourages them to think about it, because they're going to get something from me saying, hey, schedule your appointment for your annual review. And if there aren't any changes, then there aren't any changes. But we just want to make sure that we keep it at the top of your mind. So
Awesome.
Well, thank you again. This is Calla Renee Coakley with Coakley Financial Group, and we had Kimlia Sherman on here of Reed Sherman Law, and we would definitely love to have you back here. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. We will come back and answer those questions for you. Also, please feel free to like and share, or even tag anyone in this post that you feel would need this information. And we will be back soon, probably next Friday, with some additional information. September is National Insurance Awareness Month.
That's right.
So we do plan on coming on here and giving value, not just about insurance, but also making sure that our clients are educated on
the importance of life insurance and other type of
financial services that they need to consider also.
Yes.
So again, Kimlia, we are so happy that you joined us today.
And remember, love. Camila needs some love. Show us some love.
Oh, give her some hearts. Yes.
Hearts.
Yes. All right. You have a great weekend, and we will talk to you soon.
I'll see you guys next month, right?
Yes. Yeah, we sure will.
Yes.
We sure will in Atlanta. We might have you do another guest appearance then.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.